Hello everyone, it's Alex from Hello Harem, and today we're going to go over how to start a podcast in 2021. I'm not going to bore you guys with any long introductions or anything like that, so we're going to get right into it. And the first thing you need to know about starting a podcast in 2021 is this. So the first thing you need to decide before you even begin podcasting or anything like that is that you need a topic. A topic, in my eyes, arguably is one of the most important points to a podcast. It needs to be something you enjoy, something you're passionate about, something that you can talk for a very long period of time on. You want it to be exciting, not only for yourself, but also for your listeners. So there needs to be that form of enthusiasm when you're talking, because a podcast is primarily an audio-based format. You don't want to hear someone just ramble on a bunch of facts or talk in a very monotone voice about something. You want to hear some sort of excitement and vigor in their voice. Finding a topic can be a little tricky. I know it was for us a little bit. Some good advice I would offer to someone still looking for a topic for their podcast is don't lock yourself in. And what I mean by that is don't make your topic so niche specific as to where you can only get a very small viewer window, if that makes sense. Try and find something that is what you enjoy, but where you also have a broad range of subtopics to talk about. So with us, we do an anime podcast. Anime can range from anything basically about Japan. We can talk about animes, we can talk about mangas, we can talk about movies, we can talk about things that are going on in Japan, and anything of that sort. So we have this topic, this main topic, that is broken down into subtopics that we can always talk about. So try to find something that isn't too specific. You know, if you're into cars, talk about different types of cars, JDM, muscle cars, classic American cars, and things like that. There's a million things you can talk about. That's the beauty of podcasting. All right, so now that you have the topic out of the way, so you have your topic chosen, you're ready for the next step. Partners. You need to decide if you want to do your podcast either solo, with someone else, with a group of people, or if you want to be someone who has guests on their show. So there's positives and negatives to each of these ones. We'll start with solo. If you go solo, you have to make sure that you can make a continuous conversation by yourself. You can't bounce ideas off anyone, so you need to rely solely on yourself, your knowledge of the topic, and your demeanor to keep the listener's interest as opposed to having someone else to talk with. The next thing we would call is a co-host. So it would be you and someone else. With a co-host, you're able to bounce off ideas of each other. You guys can carry a conversation. It makes it a little easier and it takes a little pressure off of you as the main host. So that way they can bring forth their ideas, you guys can go back and forth. And I think that helps keep the listener engaged more, hearing two different opinions when listening to something. I can't really think of any downsides to having a co-host, honestly, unless you just like doing stuff alone, which is fine. You can do that with your podcast. No one's going to say no or anything, but I can't really think of any downsides for it. I prefer having people there. Next would be a group of people. With a group of people, you have even more conversation to bounce off of each other. You have more topics being brought to the table, more opinions being brought out. It makes it a lot easier to hold a conversation because there's more people, so it makes total sense. One of the downsides to having a big group of people is talking all at once. As you'll see, say you do start with a group of people, you need to learn how to restrain yourself, and everybody in your podcasting group needs to also learn that. You don't want to have people talking over each other because it creates this jumbled mess that's really hard to listen to. I know when we first started, we have a group of 4 people, but when we first started, it was a problem. No, we were beginners, we were just starting out, so it's a learning curve, but once you learn that restraint, it makes it a lot easier and it makes it a smoother conversation for not only yourself, but for your listener. And then the last one would be having a guest system, is what I'll just call it. Having a guest system is kind of difficult for someone who doesn't have a lot of connections, if that makes sense. You want your guests to be entertaining. You want your guests to bring something to the table. You don't want to have your friend on and you guys don't want to share inside jokes because nobody's going to get that. It makes me lose interest in a podcast very quickly if I hear these two guys who I have no idea who they are. I don't feel like I'm going to take anything away from the conversation that they're having. Hearing just inside jokes and stuff, it kind of turns me off because I don't get it. I don't think any of your listeners are going to get what Jeff said to Clark or Jennifer, or whatever. So if you do go with a hosting system, make sure to have people who are interesting, can help with the conversation, and they're not just a friend of yours. For us, we have very minimal guests on our show, but we do have it. Or we had our first buddy, Juice. He was an aspiring voice actor. We had our buddy, Corporal. He's traveled the whole South Pacific as a nomad. We had our buddy, RJ. He lived on an aircraft carrier and he's enlisted in the Navy, so he had some crazy stories from overseas. And we also had our buddy, Marcus. Marcus is from Detroit. Next on the list of points that you need to start a podcast is equipment. The most important tool for any podcaster in order to make anything is this one tool, and that is a microphone. This is the quintessential most important tool that any podcaster needs to do anything. You need a way to pick up your voice, edit it, and project it somehow, and this will do all of that. Microphones can be a bit of a complicated topic, not only for the reasons that they can be confusing when you get into XLRs and USBs and blah, 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 and this and that. What's better? If you're just beginning, I would recommend just going with a USB. USB microphones are pretty much just plug in and you're ready to go. They are super easy to use, and the quality for them is actually fairly good. We picked up these guys on Amazon for $60 a piece. Now, they didn't only come with the microphone, they also came with this stand here. So we got this whole bundle, microphone, stand, and cable for $60. The quality on them obviously is not the greatest thing in the world, but it gets the job done and it does it pretty well. They pick up everyone's voices actually really well, so I'm really impressed with this. I will leave a link in the description below for this exact setup. If you guys do want to go with a cheaper option starting out, I know it can be expensive and mind-boggling to think about this stuff, but I will leave a link in the description for this guy right here. The seller is actually really cool. They write you a little computer typed up printed note thanking you, and if you have any problems with it, they're more than happy to replace your microphone. Other than USB microphones, there's what we would call XLR. Before we go any further, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Mekong Clothing Co. Mekong Clothing is a neo-anime themed based clothing company that formed in 2020. They have tons of cool stuff on their website. They're always coming out with new drops, and they're always having a sale on the website for you guys to save a little bit. If you guys want to save on some cool anime gear today, use code Hello Harem at checkout for 20% off your entire order. The dudes at Mekong really hooked us up with this code, so go ahead and support them. It would mean a lot. All right, let's get back to the podcast. Now, XLR cables are a little bit more complicated, but they're generally better quality. With XLR microphones, you need to get a certain XLR cable. Unfortunately, that does not go directly to your laptop. You need like an audio interface to get the microphone to work on your computer. So you'd plug into your audio interface and you would use your audio interface directly to your computer. So they're a little bit more complicated and they are definitely more pricey of an option. But the quality on XLR microphones is way better. So if you're looking to get like the best quality out of your podcast right from the start, you should probably go with an XLR, but you'll have to learn how to set it up properly for that type of stuff. We do not use XLR, otherwise I would give you guys some cool tips and tricks. When it comes to actually recording your podcast, not only do you just need a microphone, but you need some sort of audio DAW to pick up your audio. We currently use GarageBand on our iMac. It's a Mac Air 2013. GarageBand is actually pretty good and handy for what we do. We can edit all the tracks in there, make sure they sound good. Recording is pretty good quality. There's tons of audio DAWs you can use. There's Logic Pro X. I know Adobe makes one. You can even use Audacity. You know, it's just as long as you can record your podcast, you're all set. All right, so you got your topic for your podcast. You and two other buddies, you found two other people and you're ready to start doing it. You've ordered your equipment, you're all set up, you're ready to go. You're just waiting for stuff to get here. Then you fall into the question, where do I record my podcast? The thing about podcasting is you can literally record anywhere you want. You can use your bedroom, you can use your basement, you can use your living room, you can use any room, really, as long as the room is soundproofed. Now, soundproofing is a very important aspect to your podcast because you don't want some echo, which I'm sure there's some sort of echo going on in here right now because I'm using the camera mic to record this. You don't want to get a lot of echo and reverberation in the room. So if you're recording in the basement and it's all cinder block and stone, your podcast is going to sound like sorry to say it. You want to get some sort of sound dampeners. Now we have some here. We have them all over the walls. It's carpeted in here. So the reverberation is greatly reduced with these. And we picked up all these sound dampeners off Amazon. We got a pack of like 50 for like $40. You can get really cheap stuff and it gets the job done. Like I said, if you're on a budget, the stuff behind me is great to use. So you got your stuff ready, your topics, you filmed, you and your buddies did your first episode, your mics came in, you're using a cool audio DAW, you're all set. But then you come to the question, where do I upload my podcast? There are tons of platforms on the internet where you can upload your podcast to for free. They're super easy to use. You just put your file in there. Once you bounce it as an MP3 or a wave, whatever you do, you can just upload your podcast and it's up there. We currently use Anchor.fm. Now, I really like Anchor because it allows us to upload our podcasts not only to Anchor, but to countless other platforms just from one click. We will upload our audio file of the podcast, that episode. We'll type in the episode title, description, what number episode it is. Is it explicit or not? Oftentimes, yes. All we do is upload it. Anchor's also really nice because you can put sponsorships in your episode with a single click of a button. When you first open the upload new episode tab, there will be a couple things on the left for say recording it and blah blah blah, and then they'll have and then they'll have an ad sponsorship segment. So all you do is just click add sponsorship if it's already pre-recorded and it's on your episode. In a way, it's actually pretty easy to make money doing a podcast. Don't take that out of context, please. It's not easy. Now, when you do upload to Anchor, your episode is not going to be instantly put out on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. What you need to do is get an RSS feed from Anchor. Now, what an RSS feed is pretty much the little code for your podcast that goes into the database of any other streaming platform, say Spotify. And they take that, and every single time you upload on Anchor, it will also take that data and put it on Spotify. You don't need to go directly to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can do it all from Anchor, and it will automatically upload your episode. An easy way to do that is just go to Anchor settings, and they'll have your RSS code right there. All you do is copy and then paste that into Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and your RSS code will be there. Now, it can get a little tricky sometimes, and I'm not an expert on RSS codes. I would recommend searching how to do an RSS swap, transfer, whatever you guys want to call it. I would look up how to do that if you're having trouble with it, because we had a little bit. I'm still not really well versed in it. All right, so with all that, you're pretty much ready to start your podcast. You have your topic, you have your buddies who you're ready to do it with, you got your equipment, you got a cool space to record, and you're ready to put out your stuff. And the final part I wanted to talk about in this episode is the aspect of putting video in your podcast. Now, video can get a little tricky sometimes, and it's not because the audio and video portion is hard to sync up. That's actually probably the easiest part to do. Video can get complicated because it adds a whole nother aspect to the podcast that you have to deal with. There is a little bit more of a budget increase when you do videos for podcasts, because you need a camera, you need some way to stand the camera. That stuff can get kind of expensive, especially the cameras. Now, when it comes to what camera to use, I will say do not use a Sony a6000 at all. We have two of them, and they cannot record for over 30 minutes, and the overheating problem on the Sony a6000 is the worst in any camera I have ever dealt with. Pay a little bit more for a better camera if you're going to for sure go for that on your podcast, but don't use the Sony a6000. I am begging you, do not use the Sony a6000. If you'd like to know more on cameras, we have another video about it. So go check that out if you're having questions. Cameras can be really confusing, so go ahead and watch that video. It will also be in the link in the description. Now, when it comes to a video, you don't want to have a blank room. It'd be boring to watch, although you're watching someone else, but you want stuff there to set the theme for your podcast. If you have a podcast about cars and racing, maybe put a couple model cars on your table, or a couple racing flags, whoever is racing flag. You want your space to look fun and inviting, but also professional. We talk about anime, so we have a bunch of anime stuff in our podcast room, whether it be plushies, figurines, or flags on the wall. You want to put stuff that I think is going to kind of set the theme and set the mood for your podcast. And the last part, for your video editing, you can use any video editing software that you prefer. I know there's Vegas Pro, there's whatever's on iMac, and we use Adobe Premiere Pro. I like Adobe Premiere Pro. I've been using it for years. It's just the easiest to use for me, but you can use whatever software you guys like. All right, guys, that's it. Now that you have all the information that you need as a beginner to start your very first podcast, go out and do it. Podcasting for me has been such a fun learning experience. I have a blast every single time we come up here to record an episode. It is so much fun, and I'm really looking forward to where the future of podcasting goes, not only for our podcast, but just as a whole. It really grew in 2020, and I know it's just growing bigger in 2021. So go out there and have fun making your podcast, guys. It is a whole different world, and there's so much to learn and take away from it. But before you guys go, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that bell button for more content from the Hello Harem. We really appreciate your sub, and we look forward to making more stuff for you guys in the future. So get out there and start your podcast.